This is something rather different, courtesy of Gavin McArdle at the Gilburn Owners Club. I've got some bits of dashboard. So that's the dash top, and this is the pot into which the instruments go, complete with bits of, I think they call that knee roll or something, trim stuff. So then, I've taken out my temporary piece of plywood for the dash top. I'm going to try the official Gilburn one. This will be interesting. Maybe I should start with the dashboard itself. Right, maybe I'll start with this then. Let's see how that goes. And because of the alterations, I suspect it won't fit quite as it might have done, but let's try anyway. Aha. So first thing I can see is it looks like the original dashboard went through, sorry, the original steering column went through the dashboard. So it's a bit high up at the moment. So that will have to change, I think. I won't be changing the steering column though. I shall be altering the dashboard, I think. Obviously I could make the hole larger, feed it through that way. Okay, so that's that pot then. And there is the dash top. Well, that does look pretty good actually. I wonder how well it'll clean up. Looks pretty good indeed. If some of the other upholstery is anything to go by, it may clean up really well. So it's fiberglass rather than plywood. So I just need to sort out the dashboard itself. So it seems that this hole here is where the dashboard, sorry, the steering column went through. And although my steering column could just about go in a similar place, it doesn't lend itself to going through because the column switches and, or rather the brackets for holding them on, aren't removable. So I think the answer may well be to remove this knee piece here, just cut this oval shape right through, turn it into a kind of U shape, then hook it over, and then the knee roll thing can go back on afterwards. Yes, I think that might be it. Okay, well that's a first assessment of this. Got delivered this morning. Obviously it's not in very good condition. That's fine, I knew it wasn't. It could be re-veneered quite easily, but that would all depend on me using the exact same shape instruments and so on, and even things like ashtrays, which I shan't be having. So this may well end up just being used as a template rather than actually being used as such. Yeah, quite good. So here's my dash panel. It's an original Gilburn Invader Mark II dash, if I'm not much mistaken. And the only big problem with it at this point is the fact that I can't get the steering column in because this little slot here is too small. So I had the choice of cutting through and kind of letting it in, or making a new one, or taking this padding thing off, cutting the wood away, putting this thing over the steering column and then putting that back on afterwards. This is an original Gilburn Invader Mark II dashboard. with no instruments, obviously. I'm going to remake this, and of course you may well have seen my blank in there, but I need to reproduce this in a slightly different size. And the thing is that this one is a bit taller. It's difficult to show that because I've got a steering column in the way. I think you can see it is a bit taller, and that's happened because the tunnel is a bit lower. So I've taken this trim piece off, and it's quite simply made. It is actually a piece of plywood, and the piece of plywood, obviously wrapped in vinyl, has got this rubber. The plywood has got this rubber strip fixed to it. It's just got foam rubber, and I think I calculated it being 1 inch by 3/4 of an inch or something like that. Could I find a piece exactly the same as that? No, I couldn't. I did though find this stuff, which is in fact the same size, but it's hollow, and it's a little bit too squishy compared to this stuff. So my idea is to make it harder by inserting a piece of silicone tubing up inside the hollow part, and with that I should be able to reproduce this shape slightly taller, suitable for my slightly taller dashboard. Sod's law says that it will get stuck. That's just what happens, isn't it? Right, let's see if this works. We've got this threaded rod which I'm pushing up inside the silicone tube. Maybe that will help me push it up inside this. Good grief. Of course, it's now got a tendency to twist. Okay, finally, I think. Is it? No, it's still got a bit of a twist on it. Okay, I think we are now in business. So we now have a kind of hard cushiony thing. Now look at it, looks a bit on the small side. Let's have a look at this one. Ah, of course there's a piece of wood in here as well, isn't there? Right, so let's offer it up. Okay. Alright, I think that will be fine when I manage to get a piece of plywood cut out to match it. So here's the dash blank, and I'm going to mark out the edge, and of course there's two edges. So I'll mark out another edge here, making sure I've got enough for this one. After a good deal of filing and belt sanding and so on, we have a couple of replacements for these parts on my slightly different shaped dashboard, which of course is also blank. So all that remains now is to, what I need to do now is to put a rubber strip on and cover in vinyl. having failed with double-sided tape, I'll go with hot glue instead. Okay, so I just need to get a knife or something and cut the end off. Back to Gilburn stuff. So I have here the dash top, which as you can see is a bit baggy because I've already removed it once. The cover, that is. A bit damaged, shame really, but also a little bit, shall we say, elderly. I've got some new fabric, which is this stuff. Looks much fresher obviously and is nice and flexible. So my target now is to recover the dash top with this stuff, and while I've been at it I've also trimmed back the underside of the sort of top roll as it comes over, because I did think it didn't match the knee height roll, which is this one. Didn't really match it very well. It was sticking out much further than this. So what I've done after taking the cover off is to slice a piece of the edge of the moulding off, and this piece of wood that's in here, I think it's there basically so you can staple the fabric to it. That had to be re-sculpted to make it go in further than it did. So yeah, talking about, what's that, half an inch, 3/4 of an inch or something off that, so it will, the width of this will match the width of that much more closely, and that will possibly release more space behind the dashboard for heaters and stuff like that. Now the distinguishing feature, if you like, of the original Gilburn cover is this stitching here with the sort of 3 lines, which I believe is called French stitching, and the effect of that is that the middle stitch does the actual join, and the ones each side flatten the inside out, or flatten the inside down, so it doesn't stand up in a lump. And that's what I'm going to try and emulate. Now I have slightly cheated by having a little bit of a go off camera with a bit of scrap, and well, considering I've never ever done that before, I changed the stitch length between the this one and that one. I think that one's slightly better actually. I shall choose it to match the stitch length that Gilburn used. Right, so I'm using maybe slightly less. I'll turn the stitch length up quite a long way. So I'm having a stitch length of 3. 3 what? I don't know, but 3 out of a possible 4. So I've already spotted that you need a surprisingly wide margin to the side of your stitching in order for there to be anything that you can stitch back afterwards at all. So I'm leaving, let's say, 1 centimetre. So this is just the main stitch now. Let's see what happens. Alright, so just the basic stitch, which as you see stands up. So what I'm going to try and do, I'm going to fold it back, and I'll fold, stitching it from this side, which you might argue is more difficult. And it may well be more difficult actually, but I think the other side stitches on, well I could check. So that's one side, and that's the, I don't know, maybe there's not much difference actually. Maybe there isn't. Okay, well perhaps I'll do it. No, I'm still going to do it this side, I think. Luckily this fabric is nice and supple. Okay, so the trick is going to be getting the stitches straight, I think. I'm going for it. So this is my Gilban original. This is my new fabric. I've got another go with some more new fabric, and I'm just going to cut it, leaving a spare centimetre. Well, I'm going to cut it along the edge of my original. That's what I'm going to do. Okay. And the back edge, that can get cut off afterwards, so I think the thing to do is simply to sew this bit to this bit. I'm not going to end up with it the wrong way around, aren't I? It's like that, isn't it? Right, I've restitched it the right way around. And now I'm going to have a go at the French business. This is the real challenge. So this is the original Gilban dash top, and one thing I did notice is it's got a slight wave in it where it goes over the top of the instrument moulding thing in the fiberglass part, but I'm finding it difficult to believe that that's necessary, considering it's basically folded like that. And it's also quite stretchy. So for that reason I'm going to avoid, well, I'm not going to bother with that in my Mark II attempt. I'll just show my Mark I attempt, which is like, well, I mean, yeah, it's a bit wavy, suffering I think from not being pinned. But the other thing to note about it is the fact that, of course, there isn't any actual need for a join. You could actually have it just wrapped over and there would be nothing. So that's another thought, and it's kind of there for decoration. So with all those things in mind, what I'm going to do in my Mark II version, as I haven't cut this into two pieces yet, and so what I'm going to do is it's pinned, as you can see. I'm going to run a stitch up here, and then afterwards I'm going to cut up the side to, or up. I'm going to sew up here, and then I'm going to cut up here, and the distance between here and here will be the size of the flap that is left. And hopefully, because of the fact it's pinned, my sewed line will be nice and tight. Now I've just got to check with myself, is that going to work? I've got a horrible feeling that it isn't, you know. Having made that mistake once already, sewing the furry side together. So if I cut it, if I cut it here, yeah, the flap will be on the wrong side, won't it? Oh dear, right, so that's no good then. Right, that's a pretty old measuring stick. Okay, so I'm going to sew along the line. Well, the marks certainly helped, although I did notice where I was starting to run out of fabric each side of the foot there, I wasn't able to guide it so well, so I've got a slight wiggle right at the end. However, I think it'll be okay because I'm not even sure I need the ends. Right. Can I sew parallel lines? That's the question. And this ought to be quite easy. Ought. So I'm having a few goes at this, and some extra purchases of leather cloth were made, and in fact this stuff here is a bit more suitable, I think, than the shiny stuff I was using before, which I think was really designed for use in clothing. This is much tougher and yet still flexible. Came from Mar Trim. Really good stuff and a wide range of selection as well. It's also not quite as black, I think, as the other stuff, so it's kind of more of a dark grey. Anyway, I'm having a few goes at this and see which one comes out best. So here I am doing French stitching again. After a fair bit of time being spent doing practice sews and remaking stuff a few times, I got the French stitching done, and I also got the sort of pocket at the end, which isn't French stitched, it's just a plain stitching, but it's looking quite promising. Obviously it's not fitted at all yet, so yeah, I think the sewing stage of this sub-project is probably over. And I just need now to do stapling, gluing, a bit of screwing to fix this piece of wood in the hole. Yeah, this is the modified piece, which is about half an inch or so shorter than it was, to give a bit more clearance for the dash itself. But yeah, I'm quite pleased with that, so I'll now move on to the fixing stage. So I've redone the knee roll with the hidden rubber tube thing, obviously covered in PVC leather cloth stuff. There's a piece of plywood in there, and I've made it removable by having it screwed on from the back. I didn't need to do that on this side, but it would be quite useful. Obviously this is going to get covered in walnut or whatever veneer. Haven't quite decided yet, but so that will have to go on top of that, obviously. And the only other wrinkle, as it were, was over here. I had to make a little sort of cutout in the plywood, which is sort of here backwards, in order to let the steering column go on. And it's a bit of a fiddle to screw this on from the back, but in fact that is the very place where it needs to be screwed on from the back, because you can't get the steering column out. There is, if this is in the way, you can't get the steering column in or out, so it has to be taken out in order to get the steering column out or the dashboard out. So yeah, anyway, I'm quite pleased with my new knee roll stuff.